And welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Mardiege. Today is Friday, July 26th. Another great episode on task for you guys here on the show. What better way to start off the show than with some breaking news that broke today? Tua Tagovailoa got that contract extension that has been mulling over throughout the entire offseason. He's the next quarterback to get paid. It was announced today, so we're going to get through all the details on his contract. Then some more quarterback talk. In that same discussion, Dak Prescott had some words to say yesterday in the press conference talking about not being afraid of potentially leaving the Dallas Cowboys after this year. So we're going to go deeper into what he meant by that. Then in the first half of the show, to cap that off, Raheem Morris talking about Kirk Cousins, clearing him medically fully for training camp, but should he give him some preseason snaps in some of those games to better be safe before the start of the regular season to see where Kirk Cousins is at game speed. That'll be the first half of the show, plus some more topics later on. Before I get started, a reminder to you guys, if you have any questions or comments you'd like to make, to use the tip and donations link, gsmcpodcast.net. By using that link, I'm able to see your question or comment. I'll read it out loud, and that way get a better sense of how you guys are feeling on anything I say, on any of the topics on today's show. It's a big help for the network and also the show, so if you guys would, please use the tip and donations link with any question or comment that you might have on today's show. But right away, we can jump into the first segment. The biggest piece of news we've had probably all week in terms of just contracts and resolving some of the quarterback issues so far in this offseason. Tua agreed just today, earlier today, to a 4-year, $212 million contract extension with the Miami Dolphins. I was very surprised by this. I was very surprised that it was Tua because, honestly, I thought it was going to be Jordan Love next. I thought Jordan, with having that hold-in, with the Packers having a little bit of pressure, and Matt LaFleur wanting Jordan Love out there but not really coming out and saying it, but, saying that he has to pivot quickly and change all of his offensive game plan around just because Jordan Love is not out there. I felt that one was the closest one to get done, but of course it had to be Tua, right? Of course it had to be Tua, who it seemed pretty hit or miss, really, because he wasn't holding out. He was present at training camp, but Mike McDaniels described it as a smooth or a fluent amount of workload that he's going to get. He had some participation on Wednesday, not so much on Thursday, and it was just like a weird situation. It just looked like they weren't anywhere near getting something done, but of course they agreed to it today around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's a massive deal. 4-year, $212 million extension, $53.1 million in average salary for Tua, with another $167 guaranteed on that contract. According to Ian Rappaport, this is the largest 4-year deal in NFL history. Largest in 4 years, meaning the most average money in those 4 years, so averaging the most amount per year in the total value of that contract. So on top of that, it's also the largest contract in Dolphins history as well. So massive news, massive in just the terms of the financials. And Tua Tagovailoa, follows Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence with this deal, making him the third quarterback to be extended this offseason. Jared Goff got his massive deal, $53 million per year. Trevor Lawrence, $55 million per year. And now Tua becomes the third highest paid quarterback with $53.1 million, just edging out Jared Goff there. Resetting the top five, now it's Trevor, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Justin Herbert to make up the top five in the NFL in the highest paid quarterback market. And it definitely surprised a lot of people. It surprised me just because the biggest thing with Tua, why I feel like a lot of people thought this might not get done, or while this was going to get pushed towards the end of training camp, was really, you look at the injuries carrying over from college. He had the hip injury. He had the head injuries then in the NFL. Can you trust Tua at this point and, one, stay healthy, but also coming off of a career year in 2023, do you have enough belief in him to carry that on consistently, at least in the next 4 years, for the length of this next contract? Those are the biggest things. And also, there are the disappointing performances against some of the better teams, because you look at last year, he was 1-5 against teams that made the playoffs, and then in his career, he's overall 6-14 in his career versus playoff teams. So he's winning less than, or he's losing double the amount of games that he is winning against playoff teams in his career. So that is a little bit alarming. I wasn't aware of that, but overall, my thoughts on this deal, I think it's fair. I think it is fair for Tua and just how he fits into the Miami Dolphins, because I know I've been on here talking about Trevor and not living up to the hype and how much he's worth and how much he's getting paid and all that stuff. And you could say the same thing about Tua in the sense, but I just feel like with Tua and the way that he fits in to the Dolphins system and where the Dolphins are right now with Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and having, I think, being more further along the path of development and being closer to more of a contender than the Jaguars are right now, I think that also plays into it. And with the Jaguars and with Trevor Lawrence, I think him being a number one overall pick, and it's not like he's had to deal with too many injuries, and of course, that's not something to elevate Tua in a sense, if that makes sense, but Trevor Lawrence, the only adversity he's really faced up until this point has just been Urban Meyer and, dealing with that bad coaching leading up into the NFL, leading up into his first season in the NFL. And with Tua, it's just been unfortunate injuries, unfortunate injury after unfortunate injury. It's not something that he can control, obviously, and that you can really hold against him too much, but it comes to a point where you just simply can't trust them, and it's not going to work out. But I think this year has been convincing enough to a point where you can look at Tua and really see a little glimpse of his ceiling that he could have with this team. Similarly with Trevor, you want to talk about playoff performances, and Tua and Trevor have had about the same amount of playoff success. But in the regular season with Tua, he just had a career year. He led the NFL in passing yards. He had a career year with 69.3% completion percentage and also a career high 29 touchdowns thrown. He's the first Dolphin to lead the NFL in passing yards since Dan Marino. So he has achieved some accolades thus far into his career that I don't think Trevor has really reached up until then. He's almost been there. He's almost reached that, you'd like to think, and he's almost been over the hump. But Tua's actually done it in the regular season. And if you want to pay quarterbacks in terms of regular season and then want to bring in the playoff success, you look at Dak Prescott and the amount of money he's getting projected to be paid. You look at the playoff performances. He's been in the league obviously longer than Tua, but in terms of the grand scheme of things, not much more successful in the playoffs against better teams than Tua Tagovailoa up until this point. And Tua has a lot more career left to be played, and arguably in a better situation here with the Cowboys or with the Miami Dolphins with Tyreek, Waddle heading just barely into his prime. Tyreek very much in his prime as one of the best receivers in the NFL. This situation with Tua now, I think the Dolphins felt good enough to give him this money and still surround him with great players and have that be enough to carry them into more success into the playoffs, because they are a good team. And I think last year, unfortunately, they had Waddle injured. They had a lot of other offensive linemen and just some of their key pieces missing out there. And they were just in a bad rut of play heading into the playoffs after losing those 2 games to the Bills. So then having to travel to Kansas City, it was never going to be a good atmosphere, a good situation for them. And with Tua, the same thing. You'd like to have everybody healthy heading into this year. Raheem Mostert also, I'm pretty sure, was not healthy in that game. So 2 massive pieces of this team. Now, in the playoffs, hopefully in 2024, you can have everybody healthy. You'd like to think that Tua is not just going to take a nosedive and play awful next year compared to what he just did in 2023. It's hard to live up to it. Those are high standards that he set for himself. But with this contract now that he has earned in his mind, and that I also believe, now comes the hard part, right? And staying there, keeping that same level. And I like the Dolphins team. I like how it fits in with Tua and the timing of everything, the system with Mike McDaniel. I think it's a good situation for Tua. They just have to do a better job. Tua has to do a better job of not taking some of these massive hits. And if he could stay healthy, we've seen him this past year as healthy as possible. And in just 1 year, I think in the years, if you want to compare him to Jared Goff, to Trevor Lawrence, or quarterbacks that just got extended this offseason, in terms of ceilings and potential that he has reached, it's right there with Jared Goff. And I was a supporter of Jared Goff getting that massive deal as well. So just based off of that, keeping him healthy is going to be the biggest thing. But if you can do that, the play that he has shown in 2023 doesn't scream that he shouldn't be paid $50 million. That's just the market. You can't really do too much about that. And it's only going to grow from here on out. So now that Tua is extended, what does that mean for Tyreek Hill? Are they going to have enough to restructure his deal and satisfy his needs? Does that change anything with Jordan Love going forward? Does that kind of put the brakes on everything that the Packers had going, and maybe now Jordan wants to reevaluate this contract after Tua is now making $53 million per year? And you could also maybe say that it affects Dak, but he was never going to get around $53 million per year, so it doesn't really affect them, but it kind of does, just because the Cowboys, the Packers, and the Dolphins were all sort of in this race to get their quarterbacks extended. Again, now the Dolphins jump. Those two teams, they get their homework done, per se. And now it's left to the Packers and Cowboys to decide who is going to be the next one to get it done. It should be interesting. I really felt that Dak and the Cowboys weren't going to get anything done, so my hope and my projection is going to be that the Packers get it done next, and depending on how much it is for Jordan Love, maybe exceeding $55 million per year now, should make it interesting for Dak next year in free agency, where I think he's going to end up, quite frankly, in that scenario for the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. But overall, Tua got his new deal, 4 years, $212 million. Good for him. He got paid based on how he performed last year. Now comes the hard part, like I said, keeping that level and making sure that the Dolphins improve this year, because they are a good team. They should be a favorite in that division, in my estimation. But we're going to leave that conversation there. And I just mentioned Dak Prescott. That is actually the next segment we're going to talk about on today's show. Interesting comments from Dak yesterday in a press conference during training camp, talking about not being afraid of what the future holds, being open to potentially playing on a different team in 2025 if that happens to be the case, because it's out of his control. He had that statement to say, plus more, that I'm going to get to after this break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Back on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to continue on sort of from the last segment into now, talking more about Dak Prescott and what further comments he made this offseason, all revolving around the contract talks that we have presented here on the situation with the Cowboys and Dak. Because on top of Dak speaking to the media yesterday, also it was Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy out there speaking to the media in a press conference, sort of introducing training camp and going over some of the biggest topics that surround the Cowboys, as usually teams do to start off training camp. And one of the things that Jerry Jones said was that he reiterated his confidence in this year, keeping Dak around, extending him, and that 2024 will not be Dak Prescott's last year. But to that point, again, obviously he's going to be confident in it. Stephen Jones, also another one of the organizational members that reiterated his confidence in being sure that this is all going to be ironed out. Dak is going to remain on this team. But we're getting conflicting reports on who's the priority right now, who wants to get paid what. Does Dak want $60 million per year? How much does CeeDee want? I saw a report also today that from The Athletic that CeeDee Lamb is planning to hold out for a long time, and it could even reach weeks, multiple weeks at that, if no contract extension is done with him. So you have a lot of different issues all over, and it seems like the Cowboys, like we've talked about previously, that you just can't address them all at one time, and it just feels like they're failing to address one of them properly, one by one, and, start to get rid of them one by one, but they haven't really gone to too much right now. They're spreading themselves a little bit thin here, and focusing in now and more on Dak Prescott and what he had to say, also talking to the media yesterday. He's very much involved in all these negotiations and how his contract affects CeeDee's, how does CeeDee's affect Micah's, and everything like that. But up until this point, before the comments that were made yesterday, I was getting the sense that Dak was feeling confident that this was going to get worked out with the Cowboys. He wasn't holding out or anything. He wasn't saying anything too out of pocket or nothing like that. He was being a good, loyal leader, an ideal quarterback per se, saying all the politically correct things, showing up to practice, saying that everything was going to get worked out. He doesn't want to focus too much on money, just on improving this team and focusing in on football. But that was the vibe I was getting before yesterday. But then after seeing the comments that I will bring up here in just a second, my feeling around Dak and just the idea that the comments he gave yesterday gave off was sort of like, it was sort of a vibe of, I'm not worried because I know I will get paid by someone eventually. That's kind of the mindset I feel that Dak is sort of shifting into now. After waiting, honestly, all offseason for something to get done, really since last offseason, honestly, where they could have started negotiating this. It's been a while now, and I think Dak potentially has had enough of this, just waiting around and hearing all the different things, having to answer multiple questions on the same thing. I think now his attitude is starting to shift a little bit, and I'll get into specifically what he said here in just a second, talking about the contract situation and just the feeling around everything heading into this year. He said, "I want to be here, but when you look up all the great quarterbacks I watched, they all played for other teams. My point in saying that is that's not something to fear. That may be a reality for me one day. It may not be my decision. That's the freedom that I have." And it's true. He hasn't said anything false in that statement. He has a no-tag clause, and he also has a no-trade clause that prevents him from being tagged, obviously, if the Cowboys can't agree to anything in the near future. And also if in any world, any hypothetical situation, the Cowboys do want to trade him just to get something back for him, he has to give the final okay. So everything right now points to Dak just controlling every sort of possible out that the Cowboys have in this situation. He really has nothing to lose at this point, and that's where you kind of get this carefree attitude. What's the word I'm looking for? Almost like this unbothered attitude from Dak, because the worst case scenario is he gets no extension. He plays out this year with the Cowboys, which very comfortable situation for him. He knows everything there is to know about the Cowboys, the expectations, playing with some of these teammates. He'll have no problem doing that. And then he finishes off this season, wherever they finish off, playoffs, no playoffs, or anything like that. It almost doesn't matter to Dak too much, because if he's not going to get extended, there's no real urgency from the Cowboys to do it at that point after the season. And you kind of get a message if you're Dak Prescott and you go the entire season on the last year of your contract and the Cowboys still haven't extended you after the year, it doesn't really incline Dak to want to be back with the Cowboys, if that makes sense. They had all this time now to extend you. Of course, they're seedy, but you're the quarterback. You want to be the priority. The Cowboys have put off trying to pay you, and then by the end of the season this year, if there's no extension, you're kind of inching towards the exit door at that point. You're kind of inching towards the exit and thinking that you're probably better off somewhere else if they're really having this hard of a time trying to pay you. And there's no doubt in my mind, and I think everybody else across the NFL, that if he does hit the market, he's going to get paid tremendously well by any team that needs a quarterback, ready to win now, team that's just missing that final piece of the puzzle that they could find in Dak Prescott around 31, 32 years old. Yeah, it's going to be a massive, investment in money, but again, if you're a team that has been longing for success, that has been needing something to change, like the Las Vegas Raiders is the team I keep going back towards, or I want to say the Giants, but they just paid Daniel Jones a lot of money, so then to pick up Dax or extend Dak and give him a brand new contract seems a little bit dicey, and same division and everything, but they fit the description of what I'm trying to lay out here for you guys, so I'd be surprised if that happened. But a team like that is just a quarterback away, that has good pieces around them, would look to Dak as a dream scenario to just pick up, pay him the money that he needs, and just move on with the rest of your business and be considered a top contender next year with the rest of the weapons that you have. So Dak in this situation, again, is playing the good soldier, playing the just this golden player for the Dallas Cowboys, because say he moves on, he doesn't get extended, and I don't want to send mixed messages here, and I want to reiterate the fact that I think time is up on this relationship. I would be for Dak and the Cowboys splitting up, but most people, most fans, most people in the media who talk about it would say that this is going to be a colossal mistake, that moving on from Dak is the worst mistake that they could have made. Obviously, they're on the side of paying the quarterback just because he is the quarterback, but again, I'm just at a point where I've seen this movie too many times where you can only rerun it a few times before I know the ending of it pretty much already. And you can try to change the cast, you can try to change the plot a little bit, but it still ends in the same way with this team, not even getting better, but staying about the same or even getting worse with the rest of their team. And it doesn't put any confidence in me thinking that they're going to get over the hump with Dak and paying him top of the market money now, as if that's going to really change anything. Of course, it's going to make you worse, but seeing that change, I think, is the biggest thing to take away from this. And Dak moving on, not getting paid, I think would probably rub a lot of people the wrong way, but I think it would be the choice to make now, especially when you have Stephen Jones also coming out, talking to reporters recently saying that Micah and CeeDee Lamb also want to be the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the NFL. So if that's the case, what can you do? You have no other choice, I believe, to just move on from Dak, because again, it's almost sacrilegious, but with the quarterback, it's almost like the Saquon situation, honestly, in both ways, because if he moves on, all the blame is going to go to the Cowboys for not extending him. How could you let Dak go? How could you move on from a quarterback that just had this season in the year before? The blame is going to be on the Cowboys, no doubt about it. But also in that same breath, by paying Dak and keeping him around for another year, it's going to be a weird situation, because now you're having to decide between the quarterback and talented players in Micah and CeeDee. And similarly to the Giants in that scenario that I said, you decided to keep the quarterback, and now look where that's left you. Of course, Dak is a lot better than Daniel Jones, but ideally just paying the quarterback just for the sake that he is the quarterback, I don't think that's the right reason to pay him. Even if Dak has done good by you, has done great in the regular season, has kept you near the top of the NFC, they've just not met the standard. The standard has been championships, NFC championships at least, and the Cowboys have failed to do that. And Dak being the face of this team now, the leader, the quarterback, obviously, if that doesn't work, you can't just keep shuffling the pieces around them. At some point, you have to look at the head of the snake and think that we're just going to have to change something from the top, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be, again, you're going to get killed from every direction, but I think I'm at that point now. You can't make the same mistake, because we already saw how it ended with the Giants. They're in a worse off spot because talent-wise, If Daniel Jones wasn't the quarterback and you still had to pick between Daniel and Saquon, it would be a no-brainer. And I think it's the same situation here with Dak. If he wasn't the quarterback and you had to pick between him and CeeDee and Micah, Dak would be the last pick out of that. In all honesty, I think most people would agree with that. But that's where it gets tricky with quarterbacks. That's where we're at with Dak. And based on his comments, it looks like he's ready to move on, whereas before, I think he was holding on to a bit of hope, but now I think reality's starting to set in a little bit here with Dak and the Cowboys. It feels so weird because, watching football, it seems like Dak has been the quarterback of the Cowboys for that entire time that I've been watching. They've been very successful, but I think it's time now. I think everyone should just come to the realization that it should be time now for the Cowboys to part ways, probably move on from Mike McCarthy and just bring in a whole new identity to this team that I think needs refreshing. And if you take a couple steps back or a step back, I think it'll be worth it to take a few more steps forward and actually see progress past just the fact of hanging around the rim and thinking that's good enough. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Should Dak stay? Should he get $60 million to stay on the Cowboys? Do you guys think that'll actually make a difference in this team in terms of results? Please let me know in the chat box or in the comment section of the video. But we will move on with some more topics on today's show. We're going to head into a break, and when we return, we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Raheem Morris officially clearing Kirk Cousins for training camp to participate fully. But with that being the case now, what is his workload going to look like? Should he play in the preseason? Differing opinions on that from Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins. So we're going to get into that and decide which side is the right side of this argument. Should Kirk play in the preseason or not? I'll give you guys my thoughts on that when we return after this break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Back here now on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to stay within the NFC and now just talk about the Atlanta Falcons. What is going on with their starting quarterback and their head coach, Raheem Morris, in his first season back now as the full head coach, the full position head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, whereas before he was the interim head coach, and now he has full range and full power over the entire roster to determine some pretty big decisions, and he's already had to make some this offseason, obviously, with bringing in Kirk Cousins, paying him a lot of money, still drafting Michael Penix in the first round. Questionable in some people's minds, definitely some head scratchers, I guess you could say, but regardless of that, we're not going to talk about who should be starting at quarterback. I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be Kirk, but the biggest issue with Kirk is he's coming off of that Achilles injury that he suffered in Week 8 last season, and now at yesterday's press conference, Raheem Morris officially announced that Kirk has been fully medically cleared for training camp to participate fully with everybody else joining the team, and it's big news because recovering from that Achilles, you never know how it's going to go. It's different for every player. You look at Aaron Rodgers, you look at Kirk Cousins now. Very similar timelines, but also different paths of getting there. Both of them made it back to throwing in OTAs. Kirk Cousins, you saw throwing at OTAs, at minicamp already, but the full mobility, the full ability that he could have reached at that point in time was not up until the max, but now it seems like he's all pretty much close to 100% as you can be after recovering from that. But what does that mean going forward? How much are we going to see Kirk? Is he just going to be going out there, running all over the place and acting like nothing happened? Where is he at in his progression through this? Raheem Morris, on that topic, said that they're still going to be cautious with how they deal with Kirk Cousins going forward. According to ESPN, Raheem Morris said that the team is going to be diligent with Kirk Cousins and also give him modified repetitions throughout training camp to make sure that he is as much of 100% and also still getting healthier. I think is the topic that goes over a lot of people's heads because he is medically cleared, but again, he's not technically that, right? You're able to come back and you're able to participate, but that doesn't mean you're up to the level of where you'd love to be. Where he was playing last season in weeks 4 to 8, where he was just going absolutely insane, he's not at that level yet. He's just able now to get back to fully participating in training camp. So different things there, different meanings for something that is very similar, but Raheem Morris is being overly cautious, being on the safer side, keeping Kirk Cousins in a modified sort of personalized plan to try and get him up to speed and healthier as training camp goes on. And on that topic, Morris specifically said that you feel comfortable with that and moving forward and doing some of those things. Obviously, some of his limitations will come in our individual drills, some of our management, making sure we don't wear him out to the point that we want to get him all the team reps as much as possible. And I think that the last part was the most crucial part of everything, where Raheem Morris says making sure we don't wear him out to the point that we want to get all the team reps with him. So the goal, the point they want to reach is making sure that Kirk is out there for all the first team reps and making sure, even if it's not at 100% or they have to sort of walk through everything and make sure nobody, knocks him over or anything like that, pushes him over too hard or hits him at all. They want to get him all the reps, at least the mental reps of going through it, walking through it is a lot better than just sitting on the sidelines and having Michael Penix out there or Tyler Heineke out there. They want to make sure Kirk comes into this offense, learning a brand new offense that this year with the Atlanta Falcons, getting everything as close to 100% as possible, which all seems great. All seems like they're taking the safe route, being cautious with it. This is the guy that you're paying $180 million or something like that. So it does make sense, but it's not ideally what Kirk wants to do. It is what Raheem Morris has laid out. It is the game plan, but Kirk Cousins also took part in the media availability yesterday, and he also spoke with the media about how he's feeling, what he would like to do this offseason, and how he views it best for him to get back to 100%. And he said, in regards to preseason, that he wants to play. He wants to get some repetitions in preseason because he thinks it'll help him get more up to speed, get more in a game-like environment, and, test that leg out, test that Achilles out in, again, a game-like scenario. Even though it's preseason, and again, preseason has fallen off from where it used to be, but anything is better than just, training camp, because training camp is hard, but again, everybody is on the same team. Everybody knows you're not supposed to look at the quarterback the wrong way before someone, curses you out or something like that for trying to hurt the quarterback. When you're going up against a different team, not to say that they're trying to hurt the quarterback, but it's not the same as just running out there with your teammates and making sure that nobody looks or hits the quarterback too hard. So he wants to play in the preseason, but in what he said to the media yesterday, he said that when he said he wants to play in preseason, when he communicated that to Raheem Morris or to the organization, he said that it felt like it fell on deaf ears. He said that Raheem Morris doesn't want him playing and has already told them that he isn't going to be playing in the preseason, but it could be subject to change. I think it all just depends on Kirk, quite honestly. I think it all just depends on how Kirk is looking. If he is very much up to speed and if he is improving a lot faster than maybe they expected him to, I don't see really a problem with playing him in preseason. There's good and bad things to this argument, right? You want to play him because you want to get him in a game-like scenario. You want to get him out there to test that Achilles against other people that aren't his friends, aren't his teammates, to just test it out, how he moves, how it looks in live action, how his drop back looks. Is he putting enough weight on it? Is he not putting enough weight on it? That all affects the mechanics of a quarterback, so you want to see that in game action. But on the other hand, absolute nightmare if he goes out there, takes a misstep, slips on the field, an offensive lineman steps on his foot or something like that, then everyone's heart drops, he gets injured again, and you don't know where to go from there. So you understand both sides of it, but again, I think I would play Kirk because I think the benefits outweigh the negatives in this sense, just because you look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I highly doubt he's going to play in the preseason, and for similar reasons, similar injuries, he's not going to be playing out there. But with Aaron, different scenario, different context, just because I think it's a safe bet to assume that Aaron doesn't really need to go out there in the preseason to test out that ankle, or test out that Achilles rather, because he's gonna look like himself come the regular season. He's off of a full year basically on rest, basically just taking last year off because he only played like 2 drives or a couple of snaps before he got injured. So it's not like he has this wear and tear on his body. And he's Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, at the end of the day, he's got the legacy, the reputation, everything for people to go out there and expect him to perform at 100% because of the fact that he is Aaron Rodgers. He has no wear and tear on his body, and Achilles injury is severe, but at that same time, the history, his arm talent, everything suggests that he can do it. But with Kirk, yeah, he's talented. Yeah, he's coming off of a good year. You could say that that momentum could carry on to this year, arguably with more weapons around him. But it's just a little different because the circumstances around Kirk, he's getting paid a lot of money. And of course, you drafted the backup just in case the worst scenario happens and Kirk does get injured. But that's the last thing you want to happen because, again, you're paying him a lot of money to be the starter. You paid him in free agency to come join your team and be your starter, not to start Michael Penix right away at the start of 2024. That's not the game plan at all. You want to keep him healthy. You want to make sure Kirk can play as long as possible, barring any injury. And you have to just triple check that he's going to be that player that you need him to be in terms of staying healthy and in terms of production also. So you don't want to throw him out there too much and maybe risk all of that going down the drain. And it isn't the same with Aaron, just because, Aaron is Aaron, and Kirk has other circumstances that could affect the Falcons and this game plan, this long-term plan that they have at the quarterback situation, where if he's out the window, then you just have to start Michael Penix earlier than you'd expect, and then it's another level of uncertainty that you just don't know how to manage at that point. It could help Michael Penix also getting more reps in training camp in that same breath, but you're not expecting him to be thrown out there right away. And the biggest point I wanted to make with why I would just side on the side of playing Kirk Cousins in the preseason, the first game that they will play is against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, albeit that you don't want, ideally, honestly, you don't want Kirk to go out there in week 1 and have his first hit since, I think, October or November, if my math isn't failing me. You don't want that first hit to be Cam Hayward falling on top of you, taking a blindside sack from TJ Watt, getting nailed from Alex Highsmith, or just anything like that. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense is very good. Yeah, it's week 1. Maybe not everyone's in their ebbs and flows of everything, but you ideally don't want to get hit by any of those guys as your first hit in over a year, or just about a year, I should say. So that to me is the biggest point. Get him out there. Maybe have him get hit a little bit. Maybe try to dive for extra yards or something like that. Slide or hit the ground, something to get him at least a little bit used to it. Because if you wait until the regular season, he might as well could very much get injured in that first game if he hasn't been hit in almost a year. And then it's the same situation, and it's almost more of a panic trying to replace everybody on the fly at the start of the regular season, where you have all this hope, you have all these ideas of where it's going to go with Kirk, and then he gets hurt, and everything is just thrown out the window. So if worst comes to worst, you could at least address that in the preseason and have a little bit more level of preparation, some more time to prepare for the regular season if, worst case scenario, Kirk Cousins gets hurt again. You don't want that to happen by any means, but I think the the risk outweighs the reward here, or the reward outweighs the risk with Kirk, getting him more prepared for that Week 1 matchup against the Steelers, making sure he's feeling good he's out there playing against opposition, should serve him well, and I think Raheem should just let him play, honestly, in the preseason. Being overly cautious could also be something that could hold your quarterback back, so again, it depends on how Kirk looks, but I would play him. I think it's safe enough out there. He's not playing for an entire game also. He's going to play for a drive or two. I think it would serve him well to get back out there, throw to his weapons that he's going to be throwing to all season. Should be crucial for him in 2024. But anyway, we're going to move on from that topic. Leave your guys' thoughts on what you guys feel that Raheem Morris should do in regards to Kirk Cousins. But we're going to move into the second half of the show now, talking about Omar Khan, the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers, talking some more on Cam Hayward and his uncertain future regarding his contract, and also addressing some of those trade rumors around the wide receiver position. And we're going to end off today's show talking about J.K. Dobbins feeling very good since joining the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to have a little bit of a debate there. Is it a better situation if the Chargers have a great 1-2 punch there with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, or is it more important that they find that elite number one receiver for Justin Herbert? We're going to get to that in just a few seconds. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Thank you for joining us back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. We have a couple more topics to get to before we wrap up the show today, starting with the Steelers general manager Omar Khan talking to the media yesterday on various topics. Training camp starting for the Steelers recently. They had their first practice yesterday. They just wrapped up the second one today. And there's a lot of things that is on people's minds in regards to the Steelers. You have the quarterback battle, the Najee Harris situation on a contract year for him. Same thing with Pat Freiermuth. Same thing with Cam Hayward as well. And also the ongoing trade rumors around the wide receiver position for the Steelers. A lot of people thinking that needs work on. A lot of unproven talent there in some people's minds. And Brandon Ayuk has been heavily linked a lot with the Steelers. He mentioned that it would be a team that he could see himself playing in if it wasn't the 49ers or it wasn't the Washington Commanders. So people likely are screaming for the Steelers to do something about that, offer the 49ers a trade. And Omar Khan addressed those two topics. I picked them out thinking that those were the main ones that carried a lot of weight in terms of the Steelers and how it could affect them going forward. Starting off with Cam Hayward, the situation around him, he's looking for a new deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Why? It says why he was away from the team this offseason. He was here and there a couple times, didn't show up to a couple of the voluntary practices, but for the most part, it wasn't something to write home about or say that he was holding out. He was just in and out over a new contract that he is trying to get with the Pittsburgh Steelers because of the fact that Pittsburgh doesn't do contract negotiations during the season. It's just sort of like an in-house rule for them, for the organization that they've been doing for a while now. This needs to happen ideally in the next month and a half for it to have any chance of getting done before the regular season. And we are ramping up the pressure now a little bit because not only do you have Cam, but you have Najee and Pat Freiermuth that you could extend, but he isn't on the last year just yet. But with Cam Hayward and talking about this, a legend, a veteran, a leader for this team, I don't think anybody wants to see Cam Hayward go. He's coming off of a rough year, but albeit that, even if he is a little bit older, the amount that he brings you, the amount of benefits that Cam Hayward brings you, I think would be something hard for the Steelers to let go. And yesterday at the media session, Omar Khan touched on it, and he said on Cam Hayward's extension and just his future overall, he said that last year, we had a rough stretch there, but I'm confident the way he works. And, Cam, the person, the player, obviously, and I have no doubt that Cam has a lot of football. I think Cam has a lot of football left in him, and I expect him to be here for years to come. So, pretty encouraging words there from Omar Khan, but the actions don't really support it as of yet. We haven't seen anything progress too much. Cam Hayward hasn't been too optimistic, I would say is the word, just because from the most part, all I've seen Cam say is that it's basically out of his hands. He's not getting his hopes too high just because it's not something that he can control. So the Steelers might have a change of heart someday and decide that maybe this isn't the best option, or they might decide that this is the best option and extend Cam, and that way, he doesn't get too attached for the Steelers, which is hard because this is where he was drafted and everything like that. But he's keeping his options open, keeping an open mind, because it could be a reality that he could face in 2025, having to play for a new team, which would be gross. It would be gross just seeing him in a different uniform. But that's where he stands. He says he wants to play 3 more years. So how the Steelers work out a deal for an older defensive lineman already making around $16 to $14 million per year, how they structure it, how much guaranteed money there is, and just the length of it as well will be something to follow. But it is encouraging what Omar Khan has in store, it seems, what he has in terms of a plan, but we'll see how much that progresses now that we're in training camp. Cam Hayward's not holding out or anything, so he is there. The biggest thing with him is going to be the health, because last year he was injured a lot, and it caused him to miss a lot of time. He didn't really pick up any traction or any momentum at any point of the season. So if he stays healthy, I think that'll only help his case tremendously. And from that point on, it'll help him get that contract to stay with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we'll see where it goes from then. And then also Omar Khan talked about the wide receiver room, which right now includes George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Roman Wilson, and Scotty Miller. In all honesty, I don't expect you guys to know maybe more than 2 names on that list, George Pickens and Quez Watkins or Van Jefferson. And that's where the Steelers are right now with this room. It's an area where a lot of people have pointed out that the Steelers could definitely improve upon. There's been rumors linking them to Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk is the biggest one because of the situation he faces now with the 49ers. It's been constantly linked. He's been constantly linked to the Steelers since he became an option. But personally, I've always had my doubts about it. It would seem like a dream scenario, but in terms of the money that you have to pay Brandon, $30 million per year, and the length of a contract is another thing, how he fits in with the Steelers, and what you'd have to give up to the 49ers to make this anywhere near possible. It seems like too steep of a hill for the Steelers to climb at this point, whereas I feel like if they desperately needed to make any changes to this wide receiver room, I feel like they would have done it. But Omar Khan also spoke about this, and he seemed more hopeful for this group. He said, "There's nothing going on right now. If there's an opportunity to upgrade whatever the room is, we're going to look at it, but I feel good about that room we have right now." So he's not saying no, but he's not overly eager to try and improve it. So I believe that with all the hurdles that they have to jump over and just how this is all turned out right now, with the stance that the 49ers are taking also, I don't really see this being an avenue that the Steelers could go down, honestly. It's just too much right now for the Steelers, I think, because they've already added a lot. They've addressed their offensive line. They brought in 2 new quarterbacks. They brought in Patrick Queen. They're adding a lot to the rest of their team, Dante Jackson also, and the quarterback position. They've added a lot already, and I just don't think they're at a spot where they have an excess of riches right now where they could decide to go out and throw the house at the 49ers to try and get Brandon Ayuk on their team. Yes, they need it, and that would be a dream scenario, but I don't see it being a case where they have enough, honestly, just to give it over to the 49ers. And yeah, at that point, if you decide to move on from Brandon Ayuk, at that point, I wouldn't even bother bringing in anybody else because the level of available receivers right now, I think you're better off just keeping this group that you have in Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson, George Pickens, obviously, because of how this offense looks, not too dependent on the pass, but more so the run. I think you can get by. If you're not going to bring in someone to the level of Brandon Ayuk, I don't see the benefit in still using resources to get another wide receiver that is probably closer to the level of the receivers you already have on your team. So it's not an avenue I would explore if you can't get Brandon Ayuk. That's just how I feel. But in terms of Cam, to just wrap up this segment and going back to Cam Hayward, it seems like if any deal was to get done between Cam or Najee Harris, I think it would be Cam Hayward, just because of what he means to the team. He's obviously super close and seen as a veteran and OG to everybody in that locker room. And with Najee, he is a running back. I hate holding that against him, but it is the landscape of where the running back position is at this point, and it doesn't help that they have Jaylen Warren there also. They have a great 1-2 punch, but I think, like most teams do, would feel that they could find another Jaylen Warren in the draft or just find another one on the free agent market next offseason or something like that. It's not fair. I don't like using that, but I think that's how the Steelers are kind of approaching this right now with Cam. If he stays healthy and he has a good training camp, he looks refreshed, he looks ready to produce this year, I see him as the most likely contract extension to get done. And right now, if they were to lose Cam Hayward, honestly, and keep Najee Harris, I think that would be a bigger blow if instead they lost Najee and kept Cam. For those same reasons that I just laid out. You still have Jaylen Warren. You still have players that you could add at that position that doesn't really change it too much because it is such a dependent position on the offensive line and the scheme. They are supposed to do a lot. They are responsible for doing a lot to make the offense successful. But if you lost Cam Hayward sooner, you don't have a replacement for him. You don't have somebody to produce right away at that level. They really like their second-year player, Keanu Benton, but to say that he's at the level of Cam Hayward right now, to expect him to make that jump isn't fair on him. So realistically, the Steelers would be worse off without Cam Hayward. So that's why I believe that'll be a deal that gets done first before anything else, if a deal was to get done before the start of the regular season. And in terms of the wide receiver room, we're not erasing all hope, but I'm not getting my hopes up too much on the Steelers adding another wide receiver or trading for Brandon Ayuk at this point. The 49ers don't have to trade him. They want to keep him. They want to continue to work something out. And if all those hurdles are stacked right in front of you, it doesn't look too likely. But with Omar Khan, you don't honestly know. When he became the general manager, I didn't know what to expect too much, and he has proven to be overly aggressive to jump on opportunities. So whatever happens, I'm going to say I'm surprised or I'm going to say I expect it, but it could go really either way with Omar Khan, and I really like that about him. I think the Steelers needed that sort of proactive change to their organization, so we'll see. They have a lot of things still left on their to-do list. We'll see which one they decide to cross off first as we head deeper and deeper into the offseason. But we're going to wrap up with that segment. We have one more to talk about on today's show. J.K. Dobbins, I think he's going to be a crucial piece for the Los Angeles Chargers in 2024. We're going to debate whether he's going to be more crucial to the success of the Chargers, or is it going to be a wide receiver that they still have to find to be that elite option for Justin Herbert. Which one is going to be more crucial this year in Jim Harbaugh's first year? Stay tuned to find out the answer after this short break. Thank you for joining us here on the show for the last segment of today's show and of the week. We're going to talk some more of the Los Angeles Chargers. Some funny comments made from Jim Harbaugh on the start of training camp. It just really personifies who he is, wraps up in all the statements that he said just to start training camp on who he is and what to expect from this Chargers team. Just that all 100% mentality on football, and really you see how much this means to Jim Harbaugh. And I think the ideas that he's going to bring, the identity that he's going to bring, makes me want to believe that this team is going to be good, but there is some things that they have to work out, which one of them being the running back situation, and specifically J.K. Dobbins, because I thought when J.K. was rehabbing from his knee injury, rehabbing and trying to get back into the NFL, there was a thought in my head, like, I remember J.K. coming into the NFL and being very impressive as a rookie, and then still from that point on having to deal with all these injuries, just unfortunate for him. And pairing him up to the Los Angeles Chargers, I thought would have been ideal, and that's exactly what happened for him to come in here to now learn and be coached by the brother of his former coach. And probably one of the biggest things is having his former offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, here with him, and a former Baltimore Raven also. It just seemed like a match made in heaven, and that's where I think you get some of the confidence from J.K. Dobbins as well, from speaking to the media and talking about this year with the Los Angeles Chargers. He seems pretty confident, like I mentioned, after being drafted in 2022, had a great year as a rookie, but from that point on, he's only played in about 24 of the potential 73 games that he could have played if he wasn't injured during that time. If you look back at 2021, in the preseason, he tore his ACL, LCL, his meniscus, and his hamstring, all in the preseason, so of course he missed the entire year. In 2022, he played 4 games at the start. Then he had arthroscopic surgery, and then he came back in the final 5 games and did all right. But again, it's not the same with missing the majority of the season. Then last year, week 1, right off the bat, he ruptures his Achilles, and it seems like he can't catch a break. The Baltimore Ravens and him decide to part ways, and now he's on the Los Angeles Chargers, and still, even through all those injuries, through everything that he's had to deal with, he seems pretty confident in this team and the belief that he has and what they're about and their identity. On yesterday, he talked about what he expects from himself in this new chapter with the Chargers. He said, "I do think if I get the volume, I'll be one of the best in the league. I've shown that," and he's not wrong, just kept it short and sweet, showing to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. If you just look at his average yards per carry in the NFL, just in the short time that he's actually been on the field, his average yards per carry is at 5.8, and that's the highest of any running back since 2020 with a minimum of 200 attempts. So JK in that season as a rookie did do all right for himself. You know, he did play very well in that year as a rookie with 134 carries, 805 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Not too bad for someone just stepping into the NFL right away and joining a team that's very much personified on the run like the Baltimore Ravens. Right away, he stepped into the limelight, into the spotlight even, with Lamar Jackson and made a big impact right away, which got a lot of people excited, but he had to deal with these injuries. Now, he is in a familiar situation, like I mentioned, with Greg Roman being the offensive coordinator here, and the same thing in Baltimore in 2020, and same thing, this pairing with Gus Edwards, which I think is going to be exciting, because not only does J.K. Dobbins believe that the injuries are past him now, he even said that the game feels slower at this point, and if the game felt fast to him back in his rookie year when he almost had 1,000 yards, you can only imagine what it could be now with the game feeling very slow for him, being in total control. And if he does stay healthy, this could be such a great thing for the Los Angeles Chargers, because as a collective, the Los Angeles Chargers have just said that they are personified on the run. They want to make that their identity. You had Greg Roman talk about at some point this offseason the idea of mentioning, having Justin Herbert with a great top 5, top 10 running game, how much better they could become, throwing that out there into the universe as the potential, as the goal that they want to reach at some point this year. And right now, Gus Edwards is projected to be the number one running back, but just imagine a healthy, productive J.K. Dobbins alongside with him. Dobbins and having this reunion with Greg Roman and Gus Edwards and all that stuff, all that sentimental stuff, it's great, but they just didn't bring him here for the Chargers for no reason. They just didn't bring him here because it sounds nice. I believe that Greg Roman still sees value in JK. I think he still believes that he could bring something to this equation because you look at how the Chargers are built up right now. Right away, you can see the imprint that Jim Harbaugh has made on this team, building up this offensive line with Bozeman as their center, Zion Johnson as one of their guards, and on the outsides at their tackles, they have Rashawn Slater, and they drafted the best one this year in Joe Alt. So their offensive line, for the most part, is built up with solid pieces there, and right now you have that. The offense, of course, looks a little bit weird, a little bit uncertain, a little bit shaky, just because you don't have that number one elite wide receiver. From the time since Justin Herbert stepped into the league, he had Keenan Allen, he had Mike Williams, he had Gerald Everett also at some point. He had an excess of riches at that position, but now it looks a little bit weird. People think that they're not going to be anywhere close to what they were because they have DJ Chark, Quentin Johnson, Ladd McConkey, who they just drafted. It doesn't jump out of the page, but I think focusing in on the run could make such a difference for this team. If J.K. Dobbins could be anywhere near the level of his rookie year, I'd say that would be more crucial for this team than finding a Keenan Allen. You can throw any receiver out there. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Justin Jefferson type of receiver for Justin Herbert. I truly think that having such a dynamic 1-2 punch at the running back position in Gus and JK could do wonders for this team because it would be Justin Herbert's best friend to just hand it off constantly to Gus and to JK relentlessly, making the defense, clamber down, have a lot more people in the box, and then that way it makes it easier for guys like DJ Chark, Quentin Johnson, and Ladd McConkey, who, again, are very much unproven, pretty much, or are at a level where they're not considered, number one receivers per se. But I think having a great running game and Justin Herbert as your quarterback, Justin Herbert can find a way to make those guys look like superstars. If the system is the way that it is laid out right now for the Chargers, Justin Herbert is good enough to fit it in tight windows if DJ Chark, Quentin Johnson are faced up with one-on-one matchups because everybody's so focused in on the run game. Justin Herbert is good enough to fit it into those tight windows, take advantage of those one-on-one matchups. And these guys aren't, like bums or anything like that by any means. Ladd McConkey has been impressing a lot during training camp, but again, we are talking about a rookie, so we have to monitor our expectations. And Quentin Johnson disappointed a lot of people last year, but the talent that he showed at TCU just hasn't disappeared. I just feel like he had a rough first year. It's not something completely rare. He just needs some more time, and I believe that maybe taking away some of the spotlight from him, putting it on this running game that Jim Harbaugh is known to want to play through, want to establish that running game first, and then playing from the inside out, I think that could benefit Quentin Johnson even more. And DJ Chark, maybe not that number one bona fide receiver, but he's had some success in the NFL, has that experience, and fitting into this system with that experience on tap, I think it could be something that the Chargers could at least work with here with Justin Herbert because of how talented Herbert is, how he's the leader, how everything really revolves around him. If you could alleviate some of that pressure with JK and with Gus, it would make everything smoother for this team, and that's why the Chargers want to focus in so much on the running game. But of course it depends on JK staying healthy. Same thing with Gus Edwards, dealing with an injury right now, keeping him away from training camp. But they're putting a lot of emphasis, a lot of stock in their two running backs, and it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to get out of here and get out of this team because the expectations for this Chargers team, I don't know where they are at right now. There's a lot of uncertainties, a lot of missing factors, but if they could find some success with this running game, it could make those expectations a lot easier to reach. And with Jim Harbaugh having the prior experience in the NFL, it could be something that can become exciting after a few weeks if the Chargers find their footing. This could be something that could blindside a lot of people. They're not going to win the division or anything like that, but it could be a faster developing thing than originally projected for the Chargers. But that's the best case scenario, obviously. We're going to have to see if JK stays healthy. I have confidence in him. I've seen him a lot being a Steelers fan with the Baltimore Ravens, playing the Steelers constantly every year, obviously. I got that slight glimpse of how good he could be. So with the Chargers, I think he could do wonders for them and make it a lot easier for them. Because this team is exciting, I want them to be good. I like Jim Harbaugh as a coach. I want to see them succeed, and I think they have something brewing here in 2024 with their running game. But that'll wrap it up. That'll wrap it up for this show, today's episode of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's show. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. If you want to see more of the show, check out both YouTube channels, the GSMC Chip Shot, the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel on YouTube for YouTube Shorts, live segments, and also individual segment videos, all posted on both channels. And as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more football discussions and NFL conversations with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me. Hope you guys all have a great weekend, and I expect to see you guys back here with me again on Monday.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn.